I heard you folks like Paladins, so as promised, I'm continuing my series on Paladins lore. If you haven't seen either of the first two videos in this series, I'd recommend you check those out before this one. Links, of course, are included in the cards above. Alright, so last video we discussed the human champions whose allegiance falls with the Resistance. However, several of you were keen to point out that both Buck and Imani had been left out. This was actually for a good reason. See, both of these characters actually have some pretty expansive backstories that connect to the ongoing feud that has engulfed the realm at large. Because of this, I separated them into their own respective video, and without wasting any more time, let's heroically leap right into it. Imani, the Last Warder. Okay, so before we get into Imani's lore, I'd like to issue a quick edit to something I said before. In my first video, I noted that Imani is both the first and last warder. However, this isn't exactly true. It's not known exactly who the first warder was, and my dyslexic ass simply misread one little lore bit. But that being said, I wanted to make that clear here and now before we got into this video.
For my people, I will do anything necessary.
Imani, the Last Warder. Long ago, dragons reigned as tyrants of the realm. Simply put, none could oppose their raw, destructive power and innate magical capabilities. They ruled over all races, subjugating everything from humans to goblins to even the Weirin, which are actually spawned from dragon eggs. However, these Weirin are seen as weak and incapable due to their significant lack of flight capabilities. Thus, their draconic parents enslave them all the same as the rest of the realm. Yeah, dragons are kinda huge dicks. Anyways, when the mortal beings across the realm had finally decided they'd had enough, it was under Valera that the greatest heroes, warriors, and wizards all united to defeat the draconic scourge. Now, when the dragons heard about this, they couldn't help but laugh. Mere men, elves, and dwarves thought they could win their freedom through combat? To us, that'd be something like if the rats, roaches, and possum living in your shed decided they'd band together and kick you out of the house. Laughable. And so these dragons met the Paladins with the full force of an entire race of near-immortal arcane juggernauts. And in the end, a stalemate was honestly the best thing these Paladins could have hoped for. The draconic scourge would not break nor even bend to them. That was all until a human woman, a sorceress of those arcane sacred arts, had finally mastered the secrets of the dragon's destructive magic. And this woman hadn't just mastered their magic, she'd also learned their language. Dubbing herself the First Warder, she would set off to confront the draconic scourge head on, teaching her warding ways to her people along the way, doing what so many before her had tried and failed to do. Mastering the dragons and bending them not only to submit and cease their evil ways, but also to serve her and her people as loyal companions. She mastered these dragons not with force nor with magic alone, but with a mix of the two, and a hefty dose of charisma on top. For even though she'd learned of the dragon's magic and of their language, ultimately, it's a dragon who chooses its master. The realm saw peace for the first time in millennia, and these warders, with the help of their dragons, built vast cities and vaults across the realm, basking in the supremacy of a civilization well beyond the rest of the realm's means. At least, they did for a time. You see, this greatest of civilizations was not long for this world, for nearly just as soon as they'd ended the draconic scourge and taken their place as the dominant, benevolent civilization that ruled over the realm, they simply vanished. Explorers were soon dispatched by human, elf, and dwarven lords to make accounts of this sudden disappearance, for vital trade routes and resources all came from these great cities of warders. However, when and if these explorers actually did find the cities they sought, all they found were vacant buildings of magic and gold, abandoned without a trace of activity. No corpses in the street, no rotted food, no signs of distress or activity at all. Just like that, the warders and nearly every trace of them was gone. For centuries, all memory of the warders faded. all until the discovery of an ancient warder vault set the realm ablaze with activity. Both the magistrate and resistance mobilized troops to seize the contents of this sacred vault. However, ultimately, both factions would fail. See, there are some folk in the realm who let others do the heavy lifting for them, and the pirate king Judd Roberts was one such man. He laid an aquatic ambush, and when the Paladins, fresh off a close victory, set sail from the island vault of the warders, Dredge's dirty trap sprung into motion, and before long he held in his hands the most sacred warder artifact ever to exist: the gauntlets of the First Warder. A relic of incomparable strategic value, for with them, one could tame any and all of the remaining dragons scattered across the realm. Dredge donned these gauntlets, and, well, let me remind you, a dragon ultimately chooses its master, and Dredge, well, what kind of dragon would want to be the lackey of an insane pirate who worships the abyss? The dragon whom Judd Roberts besieged plunged his entire pirate fleet to all new depths. Though Dredge's twisted story would not end here. Perhaps the First Warder had left these gauntlets behind so that one day a new man or woman might rise to restart the Warder's civilization, picking up where she left off. However, when ultimately it was Dredge's undead hands who still clung to these beloved gauntlets, it was Imani who quietly appeared in the dead of night to dispatch of Dredge's men. For a secret beacon in the First Warder's vault had been triggered, and she'd come to reclaim what was hers: the First Warder's gauntlets. With them, she would tame the very same elder dragon who'd ended Dredge's mortal life. And together, the two of them would embark on a journey to free the realm at large and restart the Warders as a whole.
Go time? Hold up. Snacks, ammo, inhaler.
Buck, the unyielding monk. If a man is truly nothing more than a sum of his actions, well, Buck must be fucking Superman, because this bald-headed, asthmatic hero has lived an interesting life, to say the very least. He is surprisingly one of the lore's most well-detailed characters, making various appearances in cinematics and other champions' lives. And if we're gonna start anywhere, we should probably start with the beginning of his. You see, Buck's tale started in earnest in his adolescence, where he chose to be a street thug employed by the Thousand Hands Guild. That's right, Zin's Thousand Hands Guild. Along with Sky, Koga, and even Sha Lin. His days were spent ambushing rival gangs and unprepared caravans with surgical precision, netting and blasting his foes to smithereens. However, the physical work wasn't the hard part. See, Buck is and always will be a simple man, and let's just say he never had much of a mind for politics. He did try his best to navigate the dangerous political battleground of the Thousand Hands Guild. However, when Zin's sword rose to strike down none other than Koga, a man who'd been like a son to the tyrant, Buck knew better than most that his time with the guild had come to an end. If he's willing to lash out at Koga, what could he do to me if that silver-tongued broad Sky whispers lies about me? Buck considered these thoughts only in his head, for he dared not speak them aloud. But ultimately, Buck would leave the Thousand Hands Guild in search of a more secure future. A future he thought he'd finally found in the strength and structure that was the Magistrate. Here, as a soldier, Buck fit in better than he'd thought he'd ever could. Turns out, being a soldier's easy as long as you take orders and get the job done. Not much politics and plenty of action. As a member of the Magistrate's forces, he honed his weapon handling skills and forged friendships with the likes of Tyra and Victor as a member of the elite troopers known as the Sentinels. However, the life of a loyal Magistrate soldier was ultimately not destined for Buck. Not much is known about that last fateful mission these soldiers were sent on. However, when they returned, the unit was disgraced and declared a complete failure. And when the only option left was for the Sentinels to be disbanded, Buck was not spared the Magistrate's ire. While lifelong soldiers like Victor and Strix were only demoted, Buck, the former criminal, was expelled from the Magistrate entirely. Ironically, the magistrate whom Buck had joined for stability had proved to be just as treacherous and conniving as the criminal underworld he'd left behind. Fallen from grace, Buck fell into a state of depression, as nightmares of the things he'd done in the name of the Magistrate and Thousand Hands Guild would haunt him. Buck is not a smart guy. Hell, he's not even charming or wise, but he is willful. For he dragged his depressed form from the floor he'd been tossed out on, and simply refused to end his story a broken man. Hearing of a group of monks who'd lived in harmony, away from conflict for hundreds of years, Buck would summit the great mountain known as Ascension Peak, and would finally find a lasting serenity as a devout monk to the Order of the Cosmos. These monks worshipped the Ascended One, as the legends had proclaimed that it was here on Ascension Peak that Genos' physical form evaporated and he became like the stars themselves. Buck's time as a monk would not be spent idly, or would it? As he spent all his time immersed in meditation. And when I say all his time, I mean it. For he sat in his dedication for days, or was it weeks, or maybe years? The timetable here gets a little slippery. The only thing that is known, however, is that when Buck finally did open his eyes, none other than the Ascended One, Genos, stared back. Amazed and humbled at his devout followers' will and determination, Genos laid a divine hand upon his bald disciple's forehead, and with it a flood of knowledge well beyond that of mortal comprehension overwhelmed Buck, pouring through his mind like a torrential tsunami of mind-bending realities. Such beauty! The cosmos at large was a magnificent sight to behold, but there's something else, something dark, something... Buck awoke, understanding the true reason for Genos' return. For something maleficent lurked amongst the beauty of the cosmos, and its hungry, all-consuming eyes were set upon the realm. Buck readied himself to confront this foe. However, he hadn't much time to prepare, for the Ruby Throne in all their militant might had marched upon the Temple of the Cosmos. Hearing of the Ascended One Genos' return, Leanne, flanked by her General Khan and a vast army of ruby-hued soldiers, made their way towards the once peaceful place. It was here in this fateful moment where Buck was given a choice. He could let the Magistrate steal another life from him, or he could fight and ascend to even higher peaks as a defender of the realm and his new family. Buck chose the latter and renounced his vow of pacifism. Alongside Genos, the two sought to do the impossible, for they would stand up to the Ruby Throne and all its might, and they would win, if not for the help of some well-timed friends, some new and some old. Well, that is my lore spotlight on Buck and Imani, and I gotta say I never expected Buck to have been such a well-traveled champion. I really feel like Paladins lore has some very interesting components, but they just need to be fleshed out and explained better. Which, hi-res, I don't want to brag or anything, but if you're looking for someone with a background in creative writing to help you out, I think I can help you in that regard. Anyways, with that, I'll leave you with my ever-faithful reminder to go out there and keep on loving good stuff.